All right, we need to get to work.
We need to get to work. Did it?
I don't know.
I'm so tired. The Gaming Lovers Podcast with Brendo and Jem.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it is the Gaming Lovers Podcast. I am Brendo.
I'm Jem.
And together, we are the Gaming Lovers.
Yes!
And this episode will be focusing on us together.
As lovers.
Oh.
As a married couple. Because yesterday was our 7th wedding anniversary.
Hooray
on
for
the
us.
23rd.
We did it.
Yay!
We've lasted as long as most consoles do. Roughly 7 years.
Yep. So here's to many more. We are going to focus this episode on games that have impacted our relationship through the years, that have been part of our friendship, and then things that have been good to play as married couple as well. So we wanted to share some stories. So this episode is probably going to be more personal than some of the others that we've done in the podcast so far.
It will be, but there will also be some tips as far as bridging gaps. If you have an interest that you want your significant other or potential future significant other to share with you, or to cross those boundaries a little bit, where as far as your comfort zone, their comfort zone. Ooh, we've got a bit of a clash here. How do you reconcile that? How do you grow closer and start to enjoy the same things?
And we've also got some gaming news that we will get to after our gaming goals.
Let's just stay on gaming goals, because I don't want to do sad news.
I don't want to say it either. But denial will not get us anywhere. Okay, gaming goals. How did you go this week?
I did great. I was a superhero. I saved New York City, and I'm incredible because Spider-Man is incredible, and I played Spider-Man, and therefore, through proxy, I am incredible.
So, just to clarify, when you say New York City, you mean Manhattan, right?
Well,
because New York City is huge, and it includes, Brooklyn and Queens, and like all of those other areas. It's not just...
You have the turf of which you are the superhero for. You cannot exit it. That is why Batman is almost exclusively in Gotham City.
Can't go over the
despite
water.
all the rest of the world in turmoil. You don't see Batman head to the Middle East often. But Spider-Man, PlayStation 4, I loved it from the second that I laid my sleep-deprived eyes on it, and I have thoroughly enjoyed it. Played start to finish in the main storyline. My percentage meter says I'm about 90-some% complete, as far as all the optional content as well.
Yep.
I have just been all over that like a fat kid on a cake.
So you're going to do some trophy hunting with that one?
Indeed, I will. I always enjoy doing trophy hunting in those sort of games. I've got, like I said, most of the collectibles, just most of the little fighting challenge areas to do.
Yep.
The story. Now, I think we were discussing that maybe Insomniac need a lower difficulty level to let more people enjoy this game.
Yep.
Now that I've beaten this game and I look back on all of the things that happened in that campaign, there was stuff that I forgot even happened because there's been so much of it and I've eaten it in such a small amount of time. But I think completely that its story, its characters are its strongest facet. And regardless of how fun, tough, challenging, easy the combat is, I think the story is what most people will be walking away from going, that was incredible. So here's hoping. I have poked my head around on Reddit here and there, and the Insomniac Discord, getting the opinions of people, and quite a few have contacted Insomniac through their support page and suggested a easier difficulty. Because although it's simply a pun on your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, the lowest difficulty sometimes ain't so friendly.
No, which we discussed in length in last week's episode, how I was playing on friendly and was struggling just with the spike in difficulty after it had gone through that initial tutorial. It was a little brutal in some fights and a little disheartening, I think, to constantly fail missions over and over again. You're like, but I'm not a bad gamer. What is happening? So, and I guess maybe I've been playing certain other types of games for so long that my reaction times have
Oh,
slowed a
too
little.
much turn-based
Excuses.
Japanese RPGs. Ruined everything.
I did fine in Detroit though.
You will be glad to know, if it puts your heart and mind at ease, the difficulty spike you experience is not the worst difficulty spike in that game.
Oh yeah.
There is a considerably worse difficulty spike
Things to look
later
forward
on.
to. Yeah. But Insomniac Games have come out and said that they are going to look into making an easier mode, like a safety mode, I guess, and adding that into the game.
They are considering it and assessing its viability.
Yes.
They are also releasing a New Game Plus soon, which will let you start the story again with all gadgets. Maybe that's what you need.
Well, I need to finish the game first to be able to do that. Which I haven't. I have been playing it, but I haven't finished it. And now that I know that they're possibly working on an easier mode, and part of me is tempted to just leave it where it is until that patch comes out, just because I'm like, I want to enjoy this game. I don't want to keep getting angry with it and angry at myself.
Yep.
You know, I just want to enjoy being a superhero. And for me, being a superhero means being slightly overpowered and fighting and making fights really easy.
Well, not all superheroes have to struggle.
Exactly. Or I guess if it was Superman, you'd have easier fights, in theory, because most people say that Superman is way overpowered.
Yeah.
So, unless he's fighting someone from his own planet.
But yes, a little bit of Octopath, a whole lot of Spider-Man, and yes, any questions?
Not really.
Okay, what have you been playing?
A little bit of Spider-Man.
It has been a busy week. There's not been much time for you to play things.
Not much else. I've been so preoccupied because on our anniversary this past weekend, we were actually at a friend's wedding and I was emceeing their reception. So I have been very busy prepping for that.
No, I customised this date just for you. You like us to dress up, go out for a nice meal, and you're never happier than when there's a microphone in your hand. So I just thought that would be perfect.
It was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun at their wedding, although I got to admit, man, it takes some of the fun away, being like always aware of what time is it? Do I need to do this announcement? And is this on time? Oh, we've fallen behind schedule. We need to rush through this section now. And
Yeah, there's a lot
I'm like,
to do.
I feel like J-Lo in the wedding planner, trying to get the groom and bride in the same room at the same time so we can do the cutting of the cake.
Not that easy.
No, I feel like herding sheep sometimes. Oh, that sounds awful. They're not, but you know what I mean? Trying to get everyone in the bridal party. It was fun, but I'm so exhausted today. We didn't drink, but I feel hungover. I don't know how that works.
Well, I
Just
work shift
exhaustion.
work. This is part of my daily experience, to be honest.
Jet lag me? I don't know, just fatigue. It's great fatigue. So that's my state at the moment. But this week I want to really get some gaming in, I think, as I stay in my pajamas and recover from yesterday.
Excellent. That sounds like a wonderful plan.
It does, doesn't it?
Let's move along to gaming news.
Gaming news.
Do you want the good or the bad news?
Good news first.
Okay, the good news first. I'm pretty excited. I like the retro mini consoles that have come out from Nintendo in the past couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And Sony has, how do we say it politely, copied that concept quite blatantly and is releasing the PlayStation Mini Classic.
Yes.
Now, one thing that has me a little apprehensive is that when I think of classic PlayStation games, I think of things like Ape Escape. Ape Escape is near and dear to my heart, and the fact that they're releasing the PlayStation Mini in the original design of the controllers that does not have analog sticks. Ape Escape requires analog sticks because you control the gadgets with the analog sticks.
Uh-oh.
Which means either A, there'll be no Ape Escape, which is sad, or B, they're planning to make you buy extra consoles that have analog sticks later on.
Or special controllers, I don't know, that can plug in. If they can make extra money out of it, I imagine they would take that path.
Boo.
The cynic in me is like, yes, they can make more money that way, and they shall.
Now, they have announced there's going to be 20 games on it, but they've only shown about 3, 4, or 5. And one of which,
drip-feeding, huh?
classic Final Fantasy VII.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest, there's a big question marks over what they have the licenses to still, what they can put on, what will be there, what will be not.
Yeah, because if it was Nintendo when they released the mini SNES and all that, they wouldn't have that issue because they own pretty much all of the games that are on them. Like, they create them, so they don't have any licensing issues with doing all those backtracking.
Yeah, the big ones that came out on Nintendo consoles are usually made first party in-house. Now, that is sort of true with PlayStation as well, where you've got things like Crash Bandicoot, which just had a remaster, so I don't know if they want to cannibalise the sales of that by having Crash Bandicoot on the PlayStation Mini.
Mm-hmm.
You've got other games that from companies that sometimes don't play all that nice when it comes to other people utilising their property.
Mm-hmm.
Konami.
Mm-hmm.
And other situations. But if you could have Silent Hill, Resident Evil,
Tomb Raider,
perfect, Metal Gear Solid, but even then you're starting to fill up. They said it's only going to have 20 games.
yeah. And some of those are decent-sized games.
We need Driver on there. Driver was incredible. So what about the bad news? We had the good news. What is the bad news?
I think we need a moment of silence for Telltale Games.
When are we doing the moment of silence now? Oh, is this actually the moment of silence? Oh, sorry.
What's going to happen to Bigby? They said there was going to be a second Wolf Among Us, and now we're never going to find out what happens to all of those people and Snow White, and I need closure.
Telltale Games, you will definitely have heard of them because they have made every third game that came out in the episodic narrative genre. Whether it be The Walking Dead, The Wolf Among Us, Tales from the Borderlands, Game of Thrones, Minecraft, Story Mode, Batman. They made everything.
Yes.
There are a lot of stories. Some would say they spread themselves a little too thin. Guardians of the Galaxy, that's another one.
Yep.
And that they had too many plates spinning at once.
Possibly.
Now, the negative side of that is that they use the same game engine for basically all of their games. Same animation, same actors a lot of the time. If you play those games, you will notice the same voice actors reoccurring a lot.
Mm-hmm.
A lot. They started off super great, well received, particularly The Walking Dead, The Wolf Among Us, Tales from the Borderlands.
Mm-hmm.
Tales from the Borderlands, for the record, my favourite Telltale game because it was absolutely hilarious.
So funny and so true to the game that it kind of spins off from as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is just heartbreaking to hear, a company struggling to make ends meet and that being the reason that they're closing down. So the sales just weren't high enough and they had to close their doors, and there's now a lot of developers and people, artists, story writers, etc. that are out there looking for work.
Supposedly they tried to take the business in a different direction and they just ran out of time as far as making it happen. And that's the thing when it comes to business. It's not that easy to run a business.
No.
Sometimes you will succeed and sometimes you will not. And if you fail, usually everything is gone.
Yeah.
And these employees got basically no notice, no severance, no nothing.
Yeah. It's sad. I'm hoping that a lot of other companies at the moment that are flourishing will take this opportunity to get probably some great story writers for their teams. Bethesda could really use some. And bring them into their fold so that they're not unemployed for long. Because they're great. They're great game makers.
It has been good seeing on Twitter the wider gaming community, and I don't just mean that as far as fans, but I'm talking about voice actors, directors, other people. I've seen people commenting, hey, I used to work at Telltale's in this position, and this is what actually happened, giving the full story. And then somebody from some third-party developer said, hey, we're after quality assurance people. If you've got any, get them to send their resumes in, because we need at least 4. So stuff like that. So it's good to see the need being sort of met out there as far as positions go.
And the community coming together and supporting them as well. So even in the midst of the dark cloud, I guess, that is, the end of Telltale, unfortunately, there is, you know, that nice side that comes with sad news is the community and people getting together and supporting each other when things go wrong. So
we're not all just people who criticise on the internet anonymously with the, this game sucks, you suck, blah, blah. Sometimes gamers on the internet can actually be good.
yes, they can be decent human beings. Who could have thunk?
Sadly, this means there will not be any future Telltale projects apart from, I think they're just rounding out the Walking Dead final season.
Yeah.
It means the Wolf Among Us Season 2 has been axed.
Yeah.
More Tales from
that had been
Borderlands
announced, but
has been axed. Stranger Things has been axed. They were going to do a Stranger Things.
the things they could have done with that,
They would have been very strange, I'm sure.
it would have been wonderful though. I'm really sad. So all the best, though, to everyone who did work for them, and thank you for all the wonderful games that you have given us over the years. I feel like I need to go back and replay one of them in honour of them and make all the different choices from last time, because I can do that.
Thank you, Telltale Games, for your work, and the gaming lovers will remember that.
Share the love. Follow us on Twitter at Brendo and Jem. That's BrendoJem.
Gather round, children, gather round. As we sit around the fireplace, it's time for story time. And today we're going to learn about the history of the gaming lovers.
Oh my, that sounds really boring.
Well, we don't want it to be boring, but we thought it would be a good topic to discuss on this podcast.
Just because it lines up with our anniversary. So we wanted to look back, and we've been reminiscing quite a bit this past week of our married life and our early relationship. And at the very beginning, we started off as enemies.
Well, yes. Would you like to share our very first interaction?
So the day we met in high school, but we weren't in the same year level. You were sort of friends with my older sister, Melissa.
Sort of friends.
Sort of friends. You became better friends in the later years, I think. And I went to probably steal some food off my sister during lunchtime, and she instructed me that I needed to go and kick that boy in the shins over there. I'm like, okay. Being the obedient little sister that I was.
I'd do anything for chips.
Pretty much.
So from my point of view, I'd probably stolen Melissa's jumper or something fiendish and evil, such as that. And the next thing I know, I'm talking to my friends, we're having a good laugh, and this little pipsqueak walks up, boots me in the leg, right on the shin bone, and walks off.
Yep.
And that was how we first met.
Yep.
Oh, love was in the air.
Love was in the air.
The love of wanting to throttle you.
And for years, we did not like each other, I think, pretty much through the rest of your time in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And almost, I think, it wasn't only until like the last 2 years of high school that we started to maybe become frenemies, I guess.
It was more friends by proxy.
Yeah.
It was because we hung out with a couple of key people that
Mm-hmm.
would overlap, and I still didn't like you at all. That's all that matters.
So it started off quite rough. But my last year of high school, 2005,
Nice to age yourself there.
yeah, I've already admitted my age before, so why not? Yeah, so 2005 was when we started actually hanging out and I think became proper friends. And it
you
was
saw just how decent and handsome I actually was.
we
No? Not yet.
we bonded a lot over video games because you would bring consoles over to our house that we didn't own, which was awesome.
And we have established on this podcast you did have a bit of gaming history as far as the Nintendo 64 went, but that was like the
And
end of the
PC.
line for your gaming home console experience.
I would say in 2004, 2005, or early 2000s, just in general, I was addicted to The Sims. So aside from playing Nintendo 64 with family, if I was playing by myself, I would be on the computer. That was when I played games. But we never got any other consoles. We kind of missed a generation also in our house.
Yep.
So you would bring your Xbox over, you would bring the Nintendo Wii over to our place, and we would play Smash Brothers, we would play lots of wrestling games. I think the wrestling game was at SmackDown
SmackDown
2007
versus Raw.
was one of the best games, I think,
And
out of all of their ones.
This is why we wanted to share these stories on this podcast, because I drive trains and occasionally there's like almost 1,000 other train drivers in Melbourne. So you see each other, you get to talk for like 10 minutes as you're travelling past each other and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
People ask, like, so what do you and your wife like to do? And I'm like, oh, it always sounds so nerdy. We like to watch anime and play video games and watch wrestling. And that's how we bond. So the fact that I can actually share the stories of how we bonded, how our relationship actually grew through the generations of video gaming.
Yep.
It's something I've wanted to just get out there and be happy to share instead of be like, oh, this is embarrassing.
I think when you
I
have
play Mario Kart with my wife.
Nothing wrong with that. I think because oftentimes in those conversations, you don't get to explain it properly. You don't have the time to. So we're going to take the time to explain how it works. And also, I think because when we were first friends, I did not like wrestling. I hated it. I thought it was the fakest thing in the world. I was even convinced. He showed me a photo of a wrestler named Jeff Hardy doing a jump off the top of this very high ladder. And the angle that the photo is taken, there's these cables holding stuff up in the background. I genuinely thought that those cables were wires that he was just doing stunts, and so that he had, because it was a screenshot that he showed me. He didn't actually show me the jump. He didn't have GIFs back then to show.
Oh, back in my day.
Anyway, so I was like, yeah, that's so fake. He's got cables. And the look you gave me, you could have killed me then and there.
I'll show you how fake wrestling is. Come here.
Obviously, and that's been a very slow burn as far as wrestling goes. I tolerated it because you liked it. And then there would be certain wrestlers who were funny, so I liked it when they were on. And now I watch it probably more than you.
Yeah, it's been a strange little ride to observe. Now, this isn't the Wrestling Lovers podcast, but the game SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 was pretty key in the development of our relationship because I had only ever known a little bit about wrestling in high school, barely anything. I was not at the forefront of knowledge as far as that went. But in about 2006, late 2006, early 2007, I started to watch regular modern wrestling. And it was something that myself and my good brother, Mr. Steve, would bond over.
Mm-hmm.
So I played this game, we'd create characters, we're like, oh, we'll make ourselves and we'll make Jem and we'll make Mel and it'll be like, we can all do like tag team matches and stuff. And back then, the world wasn't as politically correct as it was now, where, no, you can't have men and women in physical aggression against each other. That's no-no. So you can have intergender matches.
Yes.
And what would be hilarious is you'd refuse to make your characters weigh less than 400 pounds. Despite the fact they looked beautiful, they were slim.
So they would be super skinny, but they would weigh more than Mark
pick
Henry.
them up for half the moves because they were super heavyweights.
And they would move around like the big men. So seeing this skinny woman walk around basically like an ape, let's be honest. And it's so funny. And most of the entrances that you could choose from were the men's ones. I think there was like maybe one or two women's entrances that you could choose to replicate.
Yep.
And we didn't like most of them.
They usually were slutty ones.
Yes. So we're like, I don't really like this. I'll come out and be like Stone Cold. And it was just really funny and silly, and we would make the most ridiculous avatars, but it was fun. I mean, we'd spend ages, anyone who knows me, when it comes to creating characters, I take a good hour making characters and like working on the hair, and the colour has to be just right and things like that. So probably drove you guys nuts.
Well, the fact that you liked The Sims means that was probably your favourite part, was creating the characters. You've always enjoyed fine-tuning. All right, I want the nose to know just a little bit out more. Yes. Okay, now the width of the nose. Now the depth of the nose. And what style nose.
Yep.
All that sort of stuff. It's like, just pick a head.
Oh, that's why I love Dragon Age so much.
There you go. We found the link. But Steve and I would play against you and Mel in tag team matches. You were
Yep.
super heavyweights. We would just be normal. I'd probably make myself a light heavyweight.
Yes.
Cruiser, basically.
We'd throw you around.
And we'd play against you. You'd beat us, and then you'd go to get drinks in the kitchen, and Steve would go to me, "Did you do the job? Did you just lay down for them?" Because I have a history that when I'm introducing people to a game, I might let them
Win.
get their confidence up, so I don't just go, "Hey, play this game with me. It's fun. I will crush you." And then they never want to play with me again. And I'm like, why don't they want to play with me again? This is sad. That's why when I was growing up playing Mario Party in my household,
You'd throw the game.
I could win almost every minigame. But instead, I decided it was more fun to target one of my family members and actively try to manipulate the puppet strings and
So
try to
that
help
they would
them
win.
win. So if someone's in the lead, I'd be like sabotaging them in the mini games so the other people could win. Try to balance the scales a little bit. So Steve accused me of losing on purpose to you, and I'm like, no, I could not beat them because they
We're
would
too strong for you. Maha.
So that was entertaining, and it did help open the door to wrestling, just that little tiny peek.
I remember. Speaking of you throwing things, as far as like trying to go easy on people, you used to do that when we would play Smash Brothers. You started off that way, and then you learned quickly that even playing to win, it came back to bite you.
Yes. Well, it's one thing when you have the trend of, okay, Brendo wins, Jem wins, Jem wins. Brendo wins, Jem wins, Brendo wins, Jem wins, Brendo wins, Jem wins, Jem wins. That's fine. You can manipulate that. You can have Brendo win, Jem win. Easy. When you think, okay, I'll let her take the first three, and then I'll actually start playing properly. And when the Wii came around, back when we were getting close to starting dating,
Yep.
key games that we would play would be the Wii Sports, of course, because everyone had Wii Sports, Mario Kart Wii, Smash Brothers Wii, and the Raving Rabbids, which we've mentioned in passing in this episode, in this
Yep.
podcast before. But Smash Brothers, you played as Kirby. Kirby was easier for you because it had basically a lot more jumping than any other character. You could stay
Better
alive
recovery.
much better.
Yeah.
Whereas when I had my history of Smash Brothers on the Nintendo 64 and on the GameCube with Melee, which has still been my favourite iteration of Smash Brothers so far, me and my buddies would just do random characters. And you had to always pick a random character, and then that character was done. You couldn't use them again. So you'd progressively work your way through the whole roster. And then when we finished the whole roster, we're done with our session. So I was used to just playing as anyone, which meant I had the excuse of, I'm not that familiar with this character. How silly. I just recovered straight into the pit. Oh, what a fool I am. So I give you a few wins, then I'm like, all right, now I'll show her. And then you actually beat me legit. And I'm like, that's embarrassing. I'm going to pick one of my better characters this time.
Falcon.
And then I still get beaten, and I'm like, oh my gosh, now she's won 5 in a row. I look like an idiot. I'm the gamer here. How can this happen to me? So yes, I may have had the foolhardy, like a movie villain where they underestimate the hero, start monologuing about how great their plan is, and then suddenly, I've been thwarted. Who would have thought?
In the same vein, there's some other games that we've played probably more recent years as a married couple where you've gotten a little cocky.
Don't get cocky, kid.
Yes, with fighting games like Persona Ultimax and similar things like that, where you're like, okay, I can beat you in this.
It can be tricky to try and let someone have a little bit more enjoyment in a game without it being obvious that you're losing. I may not be perfect at that. I may not even be successful at that. But we still have fun. And occasionally you'll squeak out a legitimate perfect against me. There's no criticism on me for that. That's all your talent. So,
or button mashing.
Yes, or button mashing.
It's
That's
a legitimate
definitely
strategy.
a key of your fighting game strategy. Just stupid button mashing. It's not fair. I try to memorize combos.
I can't. When I try to do them deliberately, my mind and my fingers don't work that fast. So I have better luck triggering them by just mashing as fast as I can and making sure the direction I'm doing it is in the right direction. There's some bits like I'll know how to dodge and do certain strikes, but the complicated stuff it takes, I think, a certain amount of talent to be really good at those games.
Yeah.
I'm in awe of people that play them professionally. Like, just like they've memorized the rate of frames and all that kind of stuff. And,
Yep.
like, that's intense.
Know which frames you're invincible in. Not just which seconds, which frames in that second. That's crazy.
It is. So for us though, like I would always find it really cute because you'd start off and I can tell when you're putting it on. So you'll be like, oh, you beat me, and like in those early rounds, and then you start to get a little aggro.
You beat me, I'm gonna.
You're like, yeah, again. I'm like, you're
That's
trying
the real
to ease
Brendo
me in. The mask has come off. So. Yeah, those are games that we've definitely bonded over in the course of our marriage. We used to use Smash Brothers as a way to determine what movie we would watch because we would argue. We're like, no, I want to watch this. And you'd be like, I want to watch Die Hard. I'd be like, I want to watch The Princess Bride. And so we would lay out, 4 movies?
Yep.
And we would put in 4 controllers and have it go to CPU. So it would all be the AIs fighting each other. And we would throw them up to the highest level strength so it would be a quick fight.
And Smash Brothers Brawl, you could set it for HP fights where you have an actual amount of health.
Yep.
And that was always fun because you'd see which of your movies got eliminated first. You're like, oh, it's down to these 2. What's going to win?
It got to a time when I think I won about 5 of those in a row. And poor Die Hard was sitting there for ages.
We had like a 2-2 split for a lot of them. I pick 2 things, you pick 2 things,
yep.
And then you win. So then next time you got to pick a new one to fill in your role.
Mm-hmm.
And then you won again. So then you pick another one. So then eventually after like 5 straight, I'm like, okay, I get to pick 3, you get to pick 1. And you still win. That's not fair.
Well, it is fair. It's just the random odds. I'm not controlling the computers.
So up to that point, with Mario Party, Mario Kart, Smash Brothers, the wrestling games, Guitar Hero, those sort of games, it's also a party multiplayer game.
Yes.
But the defining difference, the defining game that changed your entire viewscape on... Is that even a word, viewscape? Your entire viewpoint on gaming. What would you say that is?
I would say the day that you introduced me to Knights of the Old Republic.
Star Wars.
Yep.
Knights of the Old Republic. One of my favourite games of all time. A BioWare RPG with turn-based, basically, it's like real-time turn-based combat.
Yep.
You input your commands and they get executed at the appropriate time. There's no twitch reflexes required.
No.
You can pause during combat and program everyone to do what you want them to do.
You can even set it so that like as soon as an enemy spots you, it pauses the game so you can get your bearings, see where they're coming from. You can't get like any sneak attacks happen or anything. And for me, because I was so used to party games or like kind of more just chill games, being able to have a game ease me into it like that was just so good. And then also the story aspects of being able to choose my path of whether I'm going to be light side or dark side, making those choices. You know, I'd never experienced a game that let me like choose romance options and things like that. I'm like, it was really a big eye-opener for me as far as gaming and what you could do in video games, and that it wasn't just, you know, lots of mini games or fighting games or racing games. Like there was a lot more out there. And so I was like, okay, I think I've found a new genre that I really love. So, and you introduced me to that. So you shifted the way I game.
And this is the key. This is why we're having this episode, is to discuss how to bond with, you know, you may have been a video gamer for years and you've started a relationship and your other half is not a gamer. Mm-hmm. But obviously, whatever you like, you want to share with your paramour.
Yes.
Your romance option. So I knew that you liked Star Wars. Mm-hmm. I knew that I liked Star Wars. And I knew that my favourite game of all time at that point most likely was Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. I knew that the combat would fit your style because you always get stressed out if you had to do things at the right time. It gave you the opportunity to cool your head, think about what to do. Mm-hmm. You could play on an easier difficulty. You could play using all the exploits that I'd learned. All right, if you use this weapon and this power combined, it basically will never miss Perfect? Perfect. There you go. This party member's not so helpful in this section. Play with this party member instead. Things like that. I can guide you for an easier experience. And again, my little social experiment being the mad professor I am. Just get to watch you. What are you going to do in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, interesting.
Yes.
And would you say Cartho Nasi is your first romance?
My
in video
first
game?
digital boyfriend.
Oh, what a handsome little block of pixels he is.
And it's funny because he came back then in Mass Effect. And I'm like, ah! And you could romance him there too, as
He
Caden.
didn't. The voice actor did.
The voice actor. Raphael Sparge? Sparge. It's got an interesting surname. I always struggle saying it.
Sparge.
You may also know him from Once Upon a Time as Jiminy Cricket. But yeah. It was just one of those fun things. I'm like, that's his voice. And also with Jennifer Hale coming back, because she was Bastila in Knights of the Old Republic, and then she is
one
Fem
of my
Shep.
first digital romances.
There you go.
A bit fond of Bastila. You've played Knights of the Old Republic many times since then as well.
Mm-hmm.
It has probably nestled itself into one of your favourite games of all time.
Oh, easily. And probably my favourite Star Wars game of all time. Nothing yet has eclipsed it. I was really excited when they announced the Old Republic a few years back. Early marriage, I think, maybe 6 years back. They announced the Old Republic, and I believe it was still BioWare, but it was online only, and I was just heartbroken. I'm like, no, this is it's supposed to be like a single player campaign. Don't do this to me, BioWare.
Well, you've learnt the unfortunate fact that game developers seem to think online is required in every game that they make at times.
Yeah.
Are you excited for Yakuza Online?
What? Why?
It's been announced at Tokyo Game Show.
But why?
Well, again, it doesn't fit very well. It's not very good, but that's a story for another day.
Oh, good grief, people. The things that companies are doing just to make a quick buck, they're hurting their own bottom line in the long run, I think.
Well, speaking of hurting your bottom line in the long run, that has begun your love of BioWare RPGs.
Mm-hmm.
Until recent years. But what sort of games did KOTOR lead you into?
Well, after that, obviously, we played Sith Lords, which is the sequel.
Yes.
And then from there...
Now, we played those original Xbox games on the 360 because they could be played on that.
So glitchy.
However, KOTOR 2 in particular, on one of the planets, it would run at like 1,000 times speed, but then the graphics couldn't keep up.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had to
You get
walk
stuck.
for a split second, save, reload, so you could see where you were, so the graphics would reset. Okay, I'm turning, I'm going to walk this way, and you'd walk, if you held the stick for 1 second, you'd be 1,000 metres ahead. So you had to sort of re-navigate, save, reload. Okay, where am I now? Oh, okay, I'm 10 steps away from the guy I'm trying to talk to. Okay, tap the stick, save, reload.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm there, I did it.
See, that's where backwards compatibility isn't necessarily good sometimes if they haven't figured out those issues. But thankfully, if you do want to play those games, you can get them on Steam modded as well. So especially because Sith Lords came out unfinished.
Oh, it was so rushed in its development cycle.
Yeah. So people have dug... I don't know how they found the files, but they found cut audio, dialogue options, and they've put them in the game and, for free, finished this game because they just love it so much.
Patched it back together.
Literally
patched it together.
Yes. And they're super cheap, so if you've not played them, I think we've said it before, but I'll say it again, so worth playing and trying out. You can even play Knights of the Old Republic on your smartphone. It is available for download. I think that's so cool. So from there, you introduced me to Dragon Age, and that was kind of relatively new. Your dad had bought that for you, and you had not finished it. You had started it. You had started on normal difficulty and had not spec'd your character properly.
To be fair, Dragon Age Origins can be very tough.
Mm-hmm.
You can get stun-locked easily, you can be obliterated and overrun in seconds.
Yep.
And yes, I completely botched the build of my rogue, who was about as tough as paper sack.
And also, I don't think you were familiar necessarily right away with it, so you gave up on it early. the best way to approach combat in that game.
Yeah.
Whereas once you get familiar with it, it's easy. And not easy, but like it's not as daunting. Dragon Age 2, I don't think had come out at that point, so then you had to introduce me to Mass Effect.
Now that didn't work very well early on, did it?
I was so nervous. I drove you nuts because I would turn a corner, pause and save. Because you could bring up the power wheel to do like biotics. I would keep hitting that anytime I got overwhelmed
Which
in
would
combat.
pause the game, basically, and allow you to recalibrate your crosshair on what you wanted to shoot.
Yep. Shoot, pause. Shoot, pause. Drove me bonkers.
Now, you've never liked the scaries in games either. And what's the very first enemy that you basically run into?
Geth. And there's...
Some shriveled up robo-corpse on a stick.
Well, they put poor people on these spikes and they get impaled and turned into humanoid reapers, basically. So I was like, great. So this is basically a zombie game? Thanks. Thanks for that.
It's just trying to get the hang of actual like third-person shooting, and this rapid speed little zombie corpse is running up to her going...
Yes.
There were sweaty hands, I'm sure.
Yes. Now I play it and like I'm okay. The things that tend to get me in the first game anyway, as far as jump scares go, are still the Rachni, which come out of vents at, random times. So even if you hear them coming, they still pop up and like startle you. So I jump so easily. It's frustrating. Like even with Dragon Age, I've played that game a million times. Right? I'll go back and play Origins, and I still, to this day, jump so badly when the giant spiders come down from above and land on your head.
Well, the fact it's like 8 times the normal audio volume when they go as well probably doesn't help.
Yeah. Every time.
But between Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic series, Dragon Age series, and the Mass Effect series, that changed your entire scope of games.
Oh, absolutely. And then I was like, so what other developers do games like this? And you're like, not really any.
Yeah, nothing that really fits that perfect build. For a long time, there was very little that I could suggest to you that fit in that comfort zone, because that was the natural progression. Okay, sci-fi, Star Wars, you love it. You got dialogue choices, excellent. Hey, you like Lord of the Rings and stuff? What about if it was one like that was elves and fantasy and things? Excellent. Hey, you liked Star Wars, so maybe in space you'll still like it. It's a bit shooty, it's a bit different, but you still have shooters, you still have choices, you still have powers.
Party banter, all that stuff.
Romances, that's all you care about. It's the romances, I'm sure. So then after that, I'm like, we're out of BioWare games that you'd like, unless you're going to go back to Baldur's Gate or Neverwinter Nights.
Or Jade Empire.
You're out of luck.
Yeah. There is thankfully a few games now that have come out that have borrowed elements from those games and what made them great. Like, and you see so many modern games even stealing like the dialogue wheel that Mass Effect first brought out. So it's nice to see other developers take that, and I think the most recent Fallout 4 had a bit more of that, because earlier Fallouts you didn't really have as much personalized conversation, I guess, with companions that would follow you around. They would be there for backup, but they wouldn't be, making comments or joining in conversations.
The companions in earlier Fallout games prior to 4 are basically just, hey, I'll hold your stuff and shoot things.
Yeah, pretty much.
They did have quests, but they had to be triggered in a very specific way, and then that was it. You'd have one quest.
You might get to ask them 1 or 2 questions if you've got their approval enough, but in 4 they added much more personality into them, so it was nice to see a bit of that injected into that. And I think that's why I've loved Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, but Fallout 4, I guess because it added those elements that I love so much from those games, like, for me, was probably my favourite out of the series so far. But yeah, I think as far as Japanese RPGs go, they've been the ones to come closest to things, and that's something else that you've introduced me to.
Persona in particular.
Yes.
I introduced you to Persona 4 after I'd played it on my Vita, but I introduced you to the anime version because I wasn't sure if you were ready to commit to an entire
that's a big
odyssey
game.
of a 100-hour game with school life and romance and part-time jobs and fighting creatures of the night. And
That's a game that requires, like, super organizational skills. You've got to prioritize your time really well or you will muck that game up so badly.
Now, you liked Persona to the point that you ended up getting your own Vita
Yes.
and your own PlayStation account and your own Persona 4 and Persona 3 and Persona everything.
Yes.
So I think that was a successful transplant.
I
Another
think
thing
so.
that we took a stab on.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I showed you the anime, which if you're going to show anyone anything, you never show them an adaptation of a video game.
No.
Whether it's TV show, a movie, or an anime, it never captures the whole essence.
That one, as far as adaptions go, is probably the best, especially for the Persona series. It does a decent job of telling the story, even if Kanji's voice changes mid-season from Troy Baker to Matt Mercer.
Yes, our introduction to Matt Mercer, we were like, Kanji sounds different. It's not Troy Baker.
He
I'm
sounds like he's
upset.
got a cold. But he does a good job. Like, for the most part, you can't tell the difference. Like, and sometimes we'll be playing a video game and we're like, is it Troy Baker or is it Matthew Mercer? We could figure out, like, let him say a few more words, then we'll be able to figure it out. Truly, the first instance that I acknowledge you playing Persona was you playing it in bed next to me, and I was either reading or doing something, and all I hear is, oh, oh, and I'm like, what are you listening to? What the heck game is this? And hearing the music but not understanding the context or being the one playing the game, it got really annoying. And I'm like, this music, does it not drive you nuts?
To the point where some of the music in Persona 3 that you were hearing me play, you hated,
Hated it.
and now you can't help but sing along with it.
I love it. But that's the funny thing, is that when you're playing the game, the music, because it complements what you're doing. But if you're not, and it's just disjointed and it's something that you're listening to and you don't understand its context, it is infuriating. And hearing the Asada hi hi
Yeah,
just
get up.
and on repeat over and over and over again. I'm like, oh my goodness, stop saying hey. So yeah. I'm trying to think of games that I have introduced you to over the years.
There is
Because
less.
you've probably introduced me to everything.
Video games were my primary hobby, whereas
Mhm.
you were more a TV watcher.
Yes.
So you introduced me to more TV shows.
I suppose that's true.
And again, all conversations should go like a two-way street, and same with sharing hobbies.
Mhm.
I say, and you sometimes get annoyed where I keep suggesting games like, hey, Quantum Break, I reckon you'd like Quantum Break, you should play Quantum Break. You're like, stop suggesting these games. I'm not going to play Quantum Break, leave me alone. But then you think of the ones that I have successfully introduced you to,
Mhm.
which have then spun off, now you like JRPGs. I mean, you had a little experience with the Pokemon Game Boy games, which at their core are JRPGs.
Mhm.
But even since then, you've played other Pokemon games that haven't quite clicked as much as Pokemon Yellow did for you, for
Yeah.
example. You sort of bail about 10 to 20 hours in and sort of just leave your little Pokemon to shrivel into nothingness.
I think I just get annoyed every time I walk through the grass. I'm like, no Pokemon find me. I just want to get through to the next section.
No, it's another Rattata.
Oh, you gotta leave me alone. So I think that's what bugs me, and I get kind of sick of the dun, 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 dun. Wait, that sounded like Mission Impossible. The
Pikachu.
battle music. That said, I am looking forward to playing Pokemon Let's Go.
Mm-hmm.
It looks
There's
so
no random
cute.
battles in that one. All the Pokemon are on the field.
Ooh, there we go. So I think I will really like it then. And
Some people complain that they've dumbed it down, but the fact that it got rid of the things that you don't like about the Pokemon games is probably makes it even more a winner for you.
yeah. So, and it just looks beautiful. I'm really looking forward to playing that.
You're listening to the Gaming Lovers Podcast. Want to join the conversation? Visit thegaminglovers.com. Record your comment or question by clicking on the button on the right-hand side, and you could be featured in the next podcast.
I can think of two other key phases that we've gone through in our video game history.
Mm-hmm.
One of which is where I wanted to share with you the story of games that you weren't actually confident enough in playing yourself. The key ones being the entire Metal Gear Solid saga,
Mm-hmm.
which you sat and co-piloted.
Yes.
How did that make you feel at the time?
Depends. If you got stuck on a fight, I would be like, oh my goodness, this is taking forever. And then those cutscenes were sometimes like movie length. I'm like, how do they get away with this? Like, people complain in RPGs that there's too much talking and yet they'll put up with this? Like, hypocrites. But it was really fun to see. Like, obviously, you knew your way around most of these games because you played them before. So
I wasn't bumbling and lost and trying to figure out what
Yeah.
to do with a card key or how to beat this boss. Sometimes it was just executing
it was.
the plan. That's
I kind of went in blind to the first one. I didn't know how weird it was going to get. So I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, it seems like it's grounded in reality. And then it just goes, woo, okay, we live in dreamland now. Someone has fallen down the rabbit hole and took the red.
pill.
Yes.
And now you know exactly who Hideo Kojima is after that experience.
He's brilliant. He definitely sees the world through a very special lens. That's for sure.
It was hilarious watching the reaction to you where there is a character, a side character, an almost nothing character called Johnny Sasaki in every Metal Gear Solid game. The first time you introduced to him, he's on the toilet with his diarrhea.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that's unfortunate. The second game, you can use a directional microphone where you're supposed to be listening to a key plot discussion that's going on through a far window. And if you turn away from that, you can listen to a guy in the toilet struggling with his diarrhea. So you're like, oh my gosh, they did that joke again. And then in Metal Gear Solid 3, which is set many years earlier, you met Johnny Sasaki's father, who unfortunately must be a genetic disorder. And at that point, you're like, okay, I see what's going on here. Someone
I
just
love
likes
running
toilet
gags.
humour. And then Johnny becomes a key character in Metal Gear Solid 4 and has high definition poop.
Mm-hmm.
Fun. It was fun just to watch you and react to those things when I knew they were coming and you're like, what are you doing? Oh my gosh. That sounds disgusting.
Yeah.
Definitely some weirdness in those games, but you have put your time on the line to endure at times, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
But now you know a lot of my references, you know a lot of my jokes about Metal Gear Solid, you know
Mhm.
all the characters, you like certain characters more than others.
Yep.
But all up, you got to watch an entire epic of
Mhm.
gaming history.
It's kind of like, I guess, how when some people go and watch other people play games like that online because they either can't play it themselves for whatever reason, whether they don't have the console or don't have the skill or the
Uh-huh.
money or for whatever reason. So it was kind of like that for you. It was not something that I was interested in playing, but I was happy to watch you play so I could still enjoy the story and understand the references as well. And I feel like even though I didn't play it, I still feel like I understand the game and I can take part in community discussions as far as the story and things like that. So I
If
can
you can
still
actually get your
appreciate
head
it.
around the Metal Gear Solid story, it's difficult for me at times.
Yes.
Another one was also your introduction to Final Fantasy.
Mm-hmm. I think the first one would have been Final Fantasy 13.
Yes, which you had watched cutscenes of and actually knew what was happening.
Yes.
A bit more than I did.
We started it together and I think, was this when we were dating?
Yes.
And because we could only play it in short bursts when we were able to hang out at your place, and I would go home.
Now, you were
and-
working at the radio station, so you had some
Oh,
time to
that's right.
yourself in between breaks and things. So you thought, what could I do?
And I started watching ahead, or I would rewatch cutscenes because the story was so complicated and so annoyingly ambiguous at the beginning. They didn't explain like the history or the lore of that world very well at all. So going and rewatching and getting ahead and trying to figure out, and then when I would watch you play, I was like, oh, okay, no, this is making a little more sense now that I know this. And I wouldn't tell you.
Whereas I'm just playing going, just smile and wave, boys. I've got no idea what is happening. I'm a Final Fantasy veteran. This makes no sense to me.
Yeah. So when you go back and I think that's one of those games that is better the second time you play it because it's makes more sense. Yeah. Which is a little unfortunate that they didn't do a better job, I think, explaining themselves earlier.
But the key being that you took the initiative to understand something that we could share together.
Yes.
And that was all on you. It's not like I pressured you to do that. I didn't even suggest it. But, hey, here we are, married 7 years later, reflecting on our successful relationship of video games.
And what would you say have shaped our marriage as far as games go?
Well, look, we started off as friendly rivals playing competitive games. And then as we started our journey and our story together, we played more story-based games. And as we started to grow and build this relationship, working cooperatively together, we went through a phase where we loved playing co-op games too.
Absolutely.
Now, in particular, one of my favourite memories with you was playing, again, Star Wars. Thank you very much, Star Wars.
Yes.
Lego Star Wars, the complete saga, because, occasionally you will meet someone in life who still likes Jar Jar Binks.
Oh, thank you for that. Now I'm going to get so many tweets and messages going.
That's where the hate mail's coming from.
Let me explain. Okay, I was a kid when those movies came out. Jar Jar Binks was aimed at kids. But also, I really love, as an adult, the theory that comes along with Jar Jar Binks now of him being secretly a Sith.
Secret Sith.
I'm like, you go back and you watch those prequel movies and...
There are hints. Let's put it that way.
There are a lot of them, actually. And if you see it with, those kind of sinister eyes, you're like, oh man, he kind of seems like a villain.
Few things I love more in narratives than the bumbling fool actually being the puppet master.
Yeah, because he's got that whole drunken master fighting style nailed down. And there was someone who put together a video online of what this theory, and they compared all of the scenes when he's in combat with actual fighters that fight the drunken style, and move for move it almost looks like an exact copy. It's one of those things where I'm like, so for me now that is canon. For me, that's just, I've changed the Jar Jar Binks is secretly evil, and it makes the movie so much better.
And I was also a mega Star Wars nerd. I was not as critical as many were on the early prequels, like Episode 1.
What do you think of midi-chlorians?
I don't mind them, because it made sense to me, because that was the plot point and I believed it. So, cool. I liked young Anakin. I liked Jar Jar Binks. One of my favourite scenes in the first movie is the pod racing scene that nobody else seems to like. That would be my go-to if I set up a new surround sound system. I would play the podcast race and just listen to all the things buzzing past my head.
You could name each pod.
I could identify. I played enough of Star Wars Episode 1 Racer that I knew them all by look. I knew them all by their flag design. I knew them all by the sound of their podcast. Podcast? That's not it. Pod Racer.
You said that twice now.
Embarrassing. Leave it in. I don't mind. People can hear my foolishness. I'm modest enough to admit that I make mistakes. But Lego Star Wars was the first Lego video game that made it big time. And we played it co-op. We got 100% of all the stuff, unlocked all the characters, all the levels, everything. What a journey that was. And the best thing about that is you unlock the characters. You're like, I know this guy. He was in the cantina in Episode 4. Oh, I know this guy is the guards on Jabba's sail barge in Episode 6. Cool, I can play as them. Whereas other people playing would just be like, who the heck's the guy with the weird stocking face?
Yes. I love some of those quirky, I guess they were, would you say puppets or Muppets? Because they had Jim Henson help
They're
out.
basically Muppets.
Yeah. They were so cool and so quirky and original. So the charm of that as well really comes through. And those Lego games are just so much destructive fun. Like, you don't
Yes.
have to be a good gamer. You just gotta like just mash and destroy things, and you can solve the puzzles like that. It's a great game, I think, not just for couples or for like a gamer and playing with someone who's a casual or not very good at playing games, but also a great game if you've got young kids to play with. Give them a controller, they'll have so much fun running around and falling off edges and dying repeatedly and losing all of those beads that they've collected. But also just mashing and destroying things. Like, they don't have to be good. They'll have fun playing along with you. So
And you can play it one time through, get through the story, you're done. Excellent, move on if you want to. But the thing I like about those games is that you have the special abilities that only certain characters have. And you don't have those characters the first time you go through those levels,
yeah.
which gives you incentive to go back and say, okay, we need someone who can destroy the gold stuff, we need someone who can hover, and with those combined, we can start getting the unlockables in this level.
Yep.
And so you put together a roster and you go in and you collect the goodies, and it's just fun.
Yeah.
I just love that sort of collectibleness. It's so much enjoyment when you have to use specific skills. That's why Metroid sort of games and Guacamelee and things like that I've liked, because you can't do it the first time you're in an area. You have to come back later with more skills.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. We have played many other Lego games since then.
Yes.
Never, I believe, to the amount that we played Lego Star Wars
We came close with The Lord of the Rings.
until it crashed.
It crashed on us. And then we're like, oh no. And then I don't think we've picked it up since. We got distracted by something else. That happens a lot to us.
We played Lego Harry Potter,
Yes.
which we still never even played the second game of. even
No,
though
we
bought it
didn't.
years
We
ago.
didn't finish the first 3 years, or first 4 years.
Yeah.
They do. Yeah, I love the personality in those games. Their sense of humor. It's like the same with Lego movies. You know, they don't take themselves seriously at all. They break the fourth wall constantly. It's really a lot of fun.
The later games have added in voice clips on the either directly lifted from the movie
Yeah.
that it's taken from, or it's just a substitute voice actor doing a match. But I kind of liked the early ones where they were just, yeah, it's like The Sims almost,
Yes.
just talking gibberish.
Or just making like approval sounds or kind of sighs and things like that. Like really simple. Still got the point across without having to actually say anything.
Fun.
Very fun.
And the co-op train kept on rolling when last year, I believe, we played hot game of the millennium. Not quite. It was Borderlands 1.
Finally. We still haven't finished Borderlands 2.
After you played Tales from the Borderlands, you're like, I want more of this world.
Yeah, I wanted to actually understand more of the context of everything and know who Handsome Jack was and things like that. So it was fun to go back and play that. It took a little while to get used to, and also to get the co-op stuff working. I think we had to plug cables in across 2 different rooms just to get everything functioning. But that was a fun bonding experience, like being in different parts of the house but still playing a game together. I don't think we'd really ever done anything like that before.
Yeah, I'd done a lot of co-op system link gaming with the Falcon over the years, whether it be competitive or cooperative. There's just something enjoyable about being in the same room. If you're playing against each other, you have the TVs sort of back to back.
Yeah.
So you still got a full screen each, but you can't see what the other player's doing like you can if you're playing on a split screen.
Yeah.
Or if you're playing cooperatively, sometimes it's even more fun to not have the ability to look at each other's TVs.
Yeah.
And that way you have to still communicate. But you're still in the same space. You can build off the energy. You can see their facial expressions light up when something goofy happens. I love that sort of thing. So I always prefer to be in the same room as someone, or at least within earshot, like we were when we played Borderlands 1.
Yes.
And just build. And that way, if there is an issue, or if you want a snack, you can just yell out, I'm pausing for a sec. Keep me safe. I need snacks.
Protect me. I found it really funny. I think there was one part when we were playing Borderlands that you were in a big boss fight and you got distracted because you had the ferrets out and one of them had climbed up your pants.
Now, if you think the pressure of a boss fight while trying to keep your co-op partner, which is also your wife, alive, try it with a ferret who is misbehaving, heading up your pant leg towards your crotch. That will strike fear into anyone's heart. And so basically my controller ended up on the floor as I'm trying to push this ferret back out through my pant leg. And I get yelled at in the game going, "What are you doing? Why are you just standing there? Is it glitched?" I'm like, yeah, it's just glitched.
I think you shouted something as you got startled.
I got a ferret in my pants!
Oh, good times. Good times.
And talking about Telltale games, sad news that it is, we've always enjoyed playing those narrative games separately and comparing our notes afterwards. Who did you keep alive during this scene? Who did you decide got leadership of the camp at this part? Things like that. Always enjoyable.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Kind of similar to what we've been doing with Detroit.
Another evolution of our gaming relationship.
Yes. And that reminds me, with Heavy Rain, when you first made us all play through that, it was a key part, one of the scarier aspects. Everyone, I was probably not so happy with you for making me play. But, that has continued to move forward with Beyond Two Souls and then now Detroit. It's kind of fun to have turned the tables on you, and I've got to thank Natalie for that.
Well, it's a give and take relationship. I'm happy to sit and watch you play. You're happy to sit and watch me play. I'm happy to make you sweat with anxiety, and it seems to go back the other way too. Sorry, forgot to update on the gaming goals earlier. I had not actually played any sessions of Detroit because of busy schedules.
Hopefully we can change that this week.
Hopefully.
Since you've brought it up, I guess we can jump into your gaming goals. So I think that could be one of your gaming goals for this week,
100%.
is to do at least one more session.
We'll try. Sometimes
live
it's
stream.
difficult with my bouncing schedule. Today, I know I'm very busy. I'm recording this podcast, going to work. Basically, that's my entire day gone. But what else am I going to play? I'm in that awkward zone where I don't really want to commit all of my time into Octopath Traveler. I'm liking it as my JRPGs can sometimes either completely draw you in, that all you want to do is play them, or sometimes it's just like, okay, these grindy battles are better used as a 15, 20-minute block here and there.
Yeah.
Because that way you don't get sick of it. Octopath Traveler is definitely fitting well into that secondary, I'll play it when I want to play a little bit here and there. Which means I'm without a primary game at the moment. I do have the restriction that we have a holiday coming up in a few weeks.
Yep.
So I don't want to start anything that's too long. So I looked at my backlog and I went to howlongtobeat.com to decide, hey, what's the right length? What's a good fit for this time frame? And I discovered that most of the games on my backlog are like 40 plus hours long, and I don't think I have time to fit them in.
Especially if you're going to be doing some trophy hunting in Spider-Man as well.
Yeah. Maybe I'll weigh up the options, I'll see what I have, depending on if I put more time into Detroit, become human again or not. I don't know. I don't know what the future holds for my gaming goals.
I think you need to also check your digital library, because I know you've downloaded a few things but haven't
Nobody
played them
checks
either.
their digital library. You buy things on sale and that's done. You don't play them, silly. Don't you know how Steam sales work?
All too well. All right, for myself, I definitely want to keep playing Persona because we've got our holiday looming, and I'm kind of halfway-ish, I think. I got distracted by Spider-Man, and I have the potential to continue being distracted by Spider-Man, but that is up to Insomniac Games.
It's on you, Insomniac.
Make it easier. Yeah, and Persona Q, hopefully I can get back into that. I feel like I've said that so many times the last few episodes.
This is what happens to you. You start a game and then you don't play it for months. So that's what happens sometimes.
My life has just been so busy.
Now, gaming goals. What about together?
Ooh.
Is there anything we're going to play together?
I don't know. How about Borderlands 2? We haven't finished that yet.
Back onto Borderlands 2.
Yes.
Well, maybe. We'll have to set it all back up again.
Yes.
It's been a while since that system was relocated. But hey, why not? Why not? I said we're basically killing time until our holiday, so maybe that's just what the doctor ordered.
Yes. We got to find out what's going on. We got partway, about
Dr.
halfway.
Z.
Yes. Sounds like a plan, Jan.
I'll see you playing games with Jan. I see how it is.
This just rhymes.
Well, I hope you've all enjoyed hearing our gaming history, what has helped us grow, what has helped our gaming knowledge grow. And hopefully there's a little tip or two in there that you could use in your relationship so you can truly grow to be gaming lovers with someone. Oh, it works both ways.
It does.
Oh, I never noticed that.
There's multiple levels to the name.
Oh my gosh. No.
Have a great week. Until next time.
Bayonara.
Oh, that's mine.
I like to take it every now and again.
How dare you?
You can say Chowski. I'll allow it.
I don't want to.
Say Bayonara.
No, you said it already.
Well, I undo my Bayonara. It is undone.
You can't. It's done. Damage done. Podcast over. Bye.
I think I'm in trouble.
Thanks for listening to the Gaming Lovers podcast. For more episodes or to watch some live stream gaming, visit thegaminglovers.com.